Welcome to Unstoppable at Craig, where we pull back the curtain on what makes healthy workplace cultures click and what happens when people are empowered to expand the boundaries of what is possible. We'll explore the perspectives of employees and leaders who have carte blanche to speak their truths, tell their stories, and unlock uncommon ways of approaching challenges. I am Dr. Jandel Allen-Davis, CEO and President of Craig Hospital, a world-renowned rehabilitation hospital that exclusively specializes in the neurorehabilitation and research of patients with spinal cord and brain injury. Join me as we learn from people who love what they do and what happens when fear doesn't stifle innovation.
I'm George Sparks, CEO of the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, stepping in as host today to kick off and introduce my good friend Jandel.
This is going to be fun.
Yeah, this really will be fun. And I was thinking back, I remember when I heard that Brian Vogt, CEO of the Botanic Gardens, that you were his chair of his board. And I thought, that is really, really cool. That's a pretty significant job. And Brian picks great leaders. So that was really impressive that you did that.
You're nice to say that. And even thinking back on things like that, there have been so many times in my career where I go, am I really getting to do this? Is this, it's an honor to serve and a privilege. And I like to tell young emerging leaders, just be very present and soak in what you can while you're there, because you never know who's watching you. And you don't really have to pursue roles as aggressively as you might think. The universe knows which doors to open for you, and I've been blessed that way.
Yeah, I think both of our lives have been blessed beyond my imagination, having grown up in southern West Virginia, a little coal mining town, and then moving on to the Air Force Academy, and then MIT, and being a pilot, and eventually having a 25-year career at Hewlett-Packard, and then the capstone of all of this to get to run the Museum of Nature and Science for the last 19 years. So.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's always surprising to me, and even as I think about how we stereotype people, is that there's this sense that careers, if you plotted them on the X and Y axis, where one is time and the other is sort of ascent, I guess, that people think these are straight lines, and they're not. And or that you start one place and that's where you end. I really did in my life, despite always wanted to be part of making things better or being at tables where people were trying to work on big or hard or thorny issues. But I always thought, and I would say, that my plan had been to walk away from work with a baby in one hand and a speculum in the other as a practicing OB-GYN. Yeah. And here I am in a neurorehabilitation hospital with a national and an international reputation for what we do and how we support people with spinal cord and brain injury. And they won't let me deliver babies here, George. They just won't. I keep asking them.
So tell me, why did you decide to become a doctor?
I will divulge something on this podcast, but I just hit Medicare age last month. So I've been around. I've been around a little while.
Welcome.
Thank you. And when I was little, so I say that because I'm old enough to have grown up at a time where girls were nurses and boys were doctors. So I have since been a tiny kid. I can still remember finding Q-tips and cotton balls and alcohol and putting them in a brown paper sack and acting like I was the little neighborhood nurse it was. But then, the women's rights movement and the modern civil rights movement opened up new vistas in ways that, as this kid, I was probably 11 or so. In fact, I was 10 when Martin Luther King was killed. And it just opened up new sorts of ways of thinking and being about what was accessible. But I was going to be a nurse. There was the opportunity that I could, in fact, be a doctor. So I wanted to be a doctor since I was about 11 or 12. And then I discovered OB-GYN, where I had the ability to be in the operating room because I just love operating and loved delivering babies. There's nothing more magical than that, I don't think.
Do you ever think about the parallels between what you did before, where you were giving people birth, having them born, and now you're having people reborn through your work here?
I think I never thought about it, in terms of those particular parallels. But what I will tell you is that there's something that feels miraculous about the rebirth that happens here in a way that's so joyful in the face of such heartbreak. Because, as I say every day, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I think I want to go to Craig today. most people don't wake up in the morning saying, I think I want to be a patient today, period, let alone to have these catastrophic injuries that you couldn't see coming, but that are a reality for everybody who's born. But what I get to see in terms of this rebirth is actually the birth of resilience in ways that people never thought about. The birth of just sort of what is innate in humans, that things want to live. We want to live, and that you're tapping into something very, I think, primitive in terms of what drive is. Right. And that's probably the other really amazing thing I see is incredible drive. People work hard. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when all the therapies typically end, if I see folks in the halls and stop and say hello to them, I like to ask them, did we work you hard today, or did we kick your butt today? And they say, yeah. I say, then our work is done here. And they laugh, and they are exhausted when they get back. I get to see the joy and witness joy at the things we so take for granted, like being able to pick up this bottle and take a top off, or to brush your teeth, or a little bit of movement in a hand that gives people that encouragement and that drive and hope, and sort of a recognition and realization that there is much to be lived on the other side of these injuries. So it is a kind of rebirth. I never thought about it that way.
Now, you work in a really cool place. Like I said, when I walked in the front door, it was like, there's something different here. I walked in lots of hospitals, but never one where I felt like that. So tell me about Craig Hospital. How did it start?
Sure. Well, it might surprise you to learn that Craig was started in 1907 as a TB sanatorium. And what happened was we developed therapeutics for tuberculosis and learned how to cure it and how to prevent it. So they pivoted to polio. And the same thing happened, thankfully. The therapeutics and vaccines were invented that made it possible that we see very little polio in the world. So in the late 50s, they pivoted again, Craig did, and took on spinal cord rehabilitation. And that was the focus of their mission. And sometime in the 70s, brain injury was introduced. So it is a national neurorehabilitation hospital for acquired and traumatic spinal cord and brain injury, and a research hospital. So they're with the volume of patients we see annually, the opportunity over decades to contribute to the field from a research perspective has also gone hand in glove with the actual rehabilitation.
So tell me, why did you start this podcast?
And this sounds some way that I don't want to fully and cannot fully or even partially sometimes own. But Tone at the Top is part of this, right? Tone at the Top is the magic of Craig. When I had the opportunity to be considered for this role and really got to dig into Craig, just like you said, when you walk in, you can feel that something different's over here. And sitting at the front desk, waiting for me that day for this 2 days of interviews, was Mike Fordyce, the former president and CEO of Craig, just sitting there, just kind of casually at the desk. And that the first person I met who was sitting at the front desk is Adam, who was our receptionist, and was just so friendly when I came in. I knew I was in someplace special. And there's something about the importance of leadership that the sort of, I think in some ways, eternal question is, or ongoing question is, are great cultures made, or are they born that way? Right. And you could say the answer is yes, but it is in some way this alchemy of great people and great leadership. And we wanted to have the opportunity to tell that Craig story through that lens, in the hopes that there's something in talking to folk like you, or other employees, or other great folks in this community and beyond, or patients and families, that might spark some what-if question by a leader out there, or help some leaders who might need a little boost to take a different look in the mirror about who might I be if I were willing, and this is my belief, if I were willing to bring my whole self to work. Yeah. And really view these jobs as not jobs, frankly, but as callings, as vocations, as sacred work.
Yeah. Now, you came here and there was a culture here. How has that culture shaped you, and how have you shaped the culture that's emerged?
Wow. I'll tell you, I'm going to answer the first part of your question. How has the culture shaped me? There was something about when I walked in for those interview sessions in the summer of 2018. You walk in this front door and you can just feel something's different here. It's the vibe, it's the energy, it's the actual physical manifestation of this thing called culture. It's the fact that our outpatient clinic is literally there. So you are immediately immersed in what the work is we do. You will see wheelchair users. You will see people working with and doing therapy right at the front door. That I knew it felt different, but it felt akin. And I remember saying, I'm home. And then I said, please, God, let it be so. And luckily, very much luckily and blessedly it is, that I got to be here. And we talk about this elusive thing called culture here, and it is elusive. I mean, you can look at the definition, and it's just a bunch of practices, behaviors, ways of being, dressing, doing that are held in common by a group of people. And if you ask me then, well, what are those things? There's a few. The first is, this is a super mission-driven place. I mean, we know what our work is, and everybody understands how they align to that mission. And I'm not just talking the therapists and the people at the bedside, or even we as executives or leaders at Craig, but our environmental services team loves this building. They understand the connection between safety and a clean and inviting and warm and aesthetically pleasing place for people who are going to be here for a few weeks. They're not coming in and going out in a couple, 3 days. But also for those of us who work here, it imbues a real strong sense of pride in what we do. So certainly this alignment to culture, but I think people who choose to come and stay are purpose-driven people, and this is their purpose, and you sort of know it innately. We're a really friendly culture. The executives go down to new employee orientation every 2 weeks. And of the many things that we say as we talk about Craig, and I'll talk about ourselves a little bit personally, who we are, I say this is a super friendly place, and the expectation is you say hello to folks when you walk by. And I tell them, and this is honest, if you don't say hello to me, I'm going to think you're mad at me, because that's my psychopathology, quite frankly. So this notion is that we are friendly to each other, but we also help each other, that the best service to our patients is given by how well we serve and support and care for each other, because it makes it a joyful place. That it is a joyful place. You would think, given who we serve and why they're here, that this would be a place that's just a total Debbie Downer place. And it's not to say that there aren't hard days for our patients and hard days for us, but in general, as Mike Fordyce told me, you can never have a bad day at Craig, and even your worst day is better than days most any place else. But then the other thing, so that, there's these sort of intangibles that we have the ability to act on. One day, shortly after I started, I looked in this drawer, because I think we all leave a drawer of papers when we leave it for somebody else to clean up. Thanks, Mike. And so I finally said, I got to open this drawer. And I looked in there, and there was in one folder a stack of these sepia tone copies of something. I could tell they were all the same thing. And I pulled these brownish copies out. And on the top it said the Craig recipe. And this is something that Denny and the team back in 2004 penned. And Denny was here until 2008 and had been the CEO for 34 years and stayed at Craig for 35 because he stayed an additional year and worked in the foundation. But I read this Craig recipe, which was several pages, where they just sort of, he started he likes to tell the story when he was 25 years old and, sort of really didn't know what he's doing, but good heavens, did he build a phenomenal culture that Mike says was my job to tend to, and I say is mine too. But it lays out it sort of describes not just what we do and how we deliver care, sort of the real brass tacks, but why it's important and what the role of family is. And I remember seeing this, and I said, I wonder how many people now know about the Craig recipe. So one of the things that was important to me was that we needed to pull this recipe out and socialize it. Not because anything was getting a little tarnished, but just as a reminder of what a sacred trust we held and hold, and that each one of us has the opportunity to either break this thing or make it. So one of the things we did with the directors, and this is a real flat organization, so there's directors, there's managers and supervisors, then there's us, the executives, is in our directors group. I introduced it there and said, like any good recipe, they need updating from time to time. So what new ingredients do we need to put in? So we updated it in 2019. In fact, we didn't take anything away from the recipe. We added to, because didn't talk much about our role as community stewards, serving as voice for patients and being a business and a nonprofit and an independent hospital. What's our role in community? Research wasn't mentioned. And volunteers weren't mentioned. So those were some of the new ingredients we put in that make the culture special. So I think it's those sorts of things. And I remember learning this phrase when I was in the Indian Health Service: we work hard and play hard. And this place works hard and plays hard. Halloween here is the most insane thing you've ever seen. And if you want to come back, in fact, on my schedule, I'll never forget the first year, it said 1:00, Halloween, 3:00, next meeting. Okay, so Halloween is 1 to 3, but it's really all day, and departments go over the top with creativity and decorating. Patients and families get into it. You'll see wheelchairs that have been transformed into Mario cars, and then there's a big contest for the best. We were Jurassic Park. That was the most incredible thing this last year, and we didn't win, and I still feel robbed. I've told people we were robbed. But people really get into that. The holidays, and in recent years, we've added both a celebration of making sure we're thinking about Hanukkah and about Kwanzaa, as well as the Christmas. Big celebrations. I come over on Christmas morning and deliver stockings to every patient's room and get to visit with families. And the stockings are ones that are made by those volunteers who just love Craig. There's a sweetness to this place that you just don't see other places.
Working in a natural history museum, and as you know, I love to read, there's a book called Anthrovision, written by Gillian Tett, who's the editor of the Financial Times. And it turns out companies now are appreciating culture more now, and they're hiring anthropologists to study the culture of their companies and of their customers. And anthropology originally was defined as studying cultures that are weird. The implication being the culture that I'm in isn't weird, but everybody else's is. And it turns out all cultures are weird. And if you accept that, then you begin to study your own, and how do you want to shape it to become the culture that you want it to become.
I love that.
So business is starting to emphasize this more.
What you've said, both in terms of the book, but also just the opportunity, and I'd go so far as to say the obligation to spend time saying, we are weird. Let's figure out why we are weird, and the good parts of our weirdness. And I think actually in some ways we want to keep Craig weird.
Yeah,
we want to keep Craig
that's
weird.
That's a great button, actually.
There you go. Keep Craig weird.
Yeah.
It's over my career, which, as I said, welcome to Medicare. I have no idea how this happened from the perspective of longevity. There are people who, in particular younger folks, who say, well, how do you do what you do? How do I do what you did? And there's this crawl before you walk. You got to sort of scrape your own knees. It's a humbling that comes along, and there are some great joys and great challenges and puzzles to solve. But when I think about great culture, there is something to be said about longevity and leadership and the lessons we learn over time. And I just wonder, you've spent decades, and don't hear that as another longevity comment, in leadership roles. And I'd wonder, would you agree with that there is some real wisdom in not throwing out your wisdom, I suppose?
Yeah, I think the longevity is a double-edged sword. Once you're in a job long enough, I think you become, it's easy to become entitled to believe you're right. I have this saying that when you begin to believe your own PR, doom is near. And so I think somehow you need to be able to always remain curious and humble, and that you're there to serve other people as opposed to telling other people what to do. So, but in other cases, like I worked for Hewlett-Packard for 25 years, and the two founders were there for more than 50 years, and they had great values, and those values stuck all the way through the company, all the way until they passed on. And then eventually they began to deteriorate over time. But so the good side of longevity is if you have a great leader and somebody that does care about serving, then you can probably continue it. But otherwise, it can turn into autocracy as well, which is really not good.
And frankly, whether you're there 10 years, 10 minutes, or 10 decades, what's our role to make sure that the beauty of a place doesn't rest on your shoulders alone, so that when you walk out the door, out goes all of that. So talk about that a little. I'd love your perspective.
Yeah, coming from the military, military is all about leadership. When you ask people to put their lives on the line, leadership is really the most fundamental part of that. And even though I went to the Air Force Academy, it still gives me great pride to say that the best model of leadership that I've ever seen came from the U.S. Army. And it only has 3 parts to it. And the first part is accomplish the mission. Because if you don't accomplish the mission, nothing else matters. Second part is take care of the troops. Because it's not about you, it's about the people that are executing on the mission. And then the final part, which bears on your question here, the third part of leadership is to create new leaders and to have people follow on from you with the values that you espouse and that the organization thinks are important. So I always come back to those 3 things, and I think if you were to follow those, you could do a lot worse than to follow those as a family or as an organization.
So, you've had a little tiny bit of time to be here, but certainly I do believe you knew Denny or got to know him well when he was interim at the Denver Zoo, and maybe even in other things. But you've heard a little bit, we've had a chance to talk, but what do you think, or why do you believe this culture has been successful? Imagine 1907, and here we are, 2023.
Each one of us, when we see someone else in a wheelchair or not as able as we are, each one of us think, that could be me. There, but for the grace of God goes me. I could have stepped out into the street, or I could have had the stroke or whatever. And I think there's a natural empathy there that is not visible for, say, that people have cancer or things like that. So I think it strikes us at a very different level. And the fact that, again, you're rebirthing those people, to me is such a powerful thing, and it is joyous. That has to be part of what drives it here, because I don't see that in the rest of the medical field. And as you know, my wife, Dr. Chandra Wilson, is a surgeon, and so I hear lots about the medical business, and I know lots of doctors and CEOs, and there's something totally different about Craig than every other medical organization that I've dealt with. And I was overwhelmed by that feeling today, just walking in here. It's hard to describe.
Well, thank you for that. And you know what, listening to you, there is a way that translates to that appendix and that appendectomy, that ectopic pregnancy, that baby, that hip surgery, that whatever. And it translates in that, back to what I said, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I want to be a patient today. And so from the perspective of the person, really person-centered, patient-centered, that experience, no matter whether it's as catastrophic as what could happen to any one of us, that appendicitis doesn't happen to everybody either. Yeah. So it could have happened. So this ability to really put ourselves in the place of what it feels like to be that dependent. Because in a way, whether, you are the person undergoing a pretty, what should be straightforward operation, but you literally have to put yourselves in the hands of an anesthesiologist. In some way, I think we're all processing those same sorts of feelings as we go through it, and then turn around and say, and what would you want in that time? Yeah. And what you'd want to know, you'd want to be enveloped by, you want to be surrounded by a team, and that team is not just the care team. It's the people who take care of the care team. Yeah. That is us. Yeah. We admit, the administrative side, the operation side of how healthcare is practiced. And if a lot of organizations talk about putting patients and families at the center of all they do, but precious few sadly do.
Yeah.
So, Judge, I remember, and it's an honor, and it's going to be a fun ride to serve on your board, which I know I'm having the chance to do.
We are so thrilled to have you.
It's fun to be there and just sort of start a new adventure and have new vistas open. But when I was doing the orientation, I sat next to Jesus Salazar, who's from Prosano. He and I were going on at the same time, and he asked this amazing question. He said, George, what are the perpetual tensions that exist in running a museum, or, you could say in running anything? And I just, it was a question that hit me in a really interesting way, because there's this sense that you'll hear, you only care about the finances. You only care about the people. You only care about quality and not the finances. You'll hear from some people, blah, blah, blah. But these perpetual tensions are pervasive. And I'd love it if you'd share a challenge that you think, or a few challenges that you think leaders across all sectors have in common.
Well, I think that's a great question. I think in business, people that aren't in business think business is all about just making money and getting rich and exploiting the worker or the customer or whatever. And at HP, Bill Hewlett, the number one objective was profit. And the reason that was the number one objective was that it was a measure of how well you're serving the customer. Mm-hmm. Because if you weren't serving the customer, you weren't going to make a profit, certainly not over the long term. Right. Always being profitable and implied that you were serving the customer. Within the museum world, there's always a tension between, say, the pure science, because we do research, we do collections, or serving the visitors, entertaining the visitors and educating them at the same time. There's also a tension about looking backwards. Museums historically have looked in the rearview mirror, what happened, and here's what happened. And there's not much discussion about the future. So, as you know, we're trying to look out the windshield and put on the high beams and figure out where are we going, and what that we know from the past can help us build a better future. And then how can we turn that into better policy for all folks? So it's multidimensional. It's almost like a web rather than the two ends of a string. Mm-hmm. It's like you're holding up a whole net of different tensions, but you have to balance all of them, or you're going to fall through the net,
or you will fall through
and dump on the ground. And they're constantly changing as well.
I like to talk about competing and conflicting priorities, and that's what we swim in. Mm-hmm. We swim in, and I think it is something that our teams don't always appreciate unless we tell them. I mean, I think there's some real responsibility of ours is to tell the story of the organization. And because, I can remember times when I wasn't in leadership where I sure was happy to bash leadership, right? And I think there are times where I still bash leadership if I think we're not doing it well. But there's something about, opening up the trench coat or pulling back the curtains and showing people about these leadership challenges. And you talked about them, where we've got to think about margin and mission, right? Yep. But how the two play together is how I take Mr. Hewlett's comment about profits. But then there are those where they do get out of balance with profit and forget quality and forget those they serve and those who serve who you serve. So it's a constant sort of understanding of those competing and conflicting priorities and challenges. So I really appreciate that answer. Yeah,
I found that if you focus on the customer, solving their problems, we all have customers. We're here to serve somebody else. If you focus on that, the financials take care of themselves.
They really do.
It's if you go about it the other way around, it's so hard, and you almost always fail. So what do you hope people take away from this podcast? This is personal. This is you.
I think the two biggest things that I'd like folks to take away from is the opportunity to see leaders, to see us, and to be seen by us. So through our eyes, how do we think about those we serve? And to have a sense of the sacred trust that leadership is, that leaders will lead less or manage less and talk about serving more, serving those who are our team members, but also, as you said earlier, our customers. So that's the first. I think the second is that I want people to take away from this through how we talk about it, how we engage in conversation, that when it's all said and done, we all put our pants on the same way. Yep. And that's the third thing I'd say that I hope people get out of this, is that there's no I in this, that the most important transition as leaders that we have to make is stop saying I, the transition from I to we, so that you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. In fact, you are typically not the smartest person in the room at this level, because I can't get a 30-year CFO career or a physical therapy career or, hospital operations career. I've had this role for 4 years, and there are people here who know this place through and through. So it's this idea of getting clear about what is it that I bring. What is it that I uniquely bring? But then what does this role require as well? So having the opportunity to explore those things. And then I hope that young people who aspire to, people, right behind me in terms of age, people my age, people older, begin to see and feel confident and maybe reassured or a little bit better supported in the belief that we can build great cultures. They're not born, they're made. Mm-hmm. And with intention in some different ways, checking your ego at the door, because there's a whole lot of that needs to happen. We can turn icky cultures around, and we can keep great places as great as they are. Or as Mike Fordyce told me, just take this great place and make it better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, George, you are such a dear friend and so, as you know, loved in this community. And thanks for being a part of this kickoff of Unstoppable at Craig.
Well, I can't tell you how honored I am to do it, especially for you and for Craig Hospital. So believe me, the pleasure is all mine, and I'm humbled by this. So thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you. And remember to sign up and follow Unstoppable at Craig wherever you listen to your podcast so you won't miss an episode. And now jump over to our next episode about wholehearted work.